Now, Peadar Tóibín is with us as well, TD and leader of Aontú. So do you see it as this government reaping the rewards of investments made and changes made by the last government, or has the policy changed?
Yes, Aontú has always said that we need to provide shelter for those who are actually fleeing war and violence. But the last governments were completely chaotic in terms of the delivery of the process. They were so lax. They basically were sending out a message internationally that if you come to Ireland, 80% of the applications will be successful, and the applications will take 4, 5, 6 years to process. And then even if you fail the application and you get a deportation order, you are 85% likely not to be deported. And, it was incredible when you think about it. Aontú PQs showed that, only 15% of deportations were being actioned at the time. And when I asked the minister, could she confirm if the other people left, she said that we can't confirm because we have no exit policy at the airports. We can't prove if someone's left the country or not.
Well, let's leave that because we can talk about what happened before. But what's happening today and now, this is the tougher approach, Peadar, that you were looking for.
So we basically said if you keep sending this message out, the numbers are going to keep coming up because people are logical. They will come to the path of least resistance in terms of accommodation. And it's very clear what we said has come to pass. Now that the government is getting a little bit stricter, the numbers are starting to fall. So there's a direct correlation between how strict the government is and the numbers coming in. And remember, there's a big cost for this as well, because again, we spent €1 billion on asylum accommodation last year. €1 billion, the first time it topped €1 billion. And we know now that about 80% of those who are seeking asylum are not actually are failing the asylum application process at the first test. So we're actually providing hundreds of millions of euros for accommodation to people who are not asylum seekers, who are economic migrants looking to use the asylum process to come into the country. Now, that's not a good use of money. In actual fact, and you mentioned it there, and I think it's correct, the solution to the accommodation system is actually having a strict system, so therefore numbers fall, and then you can accommodate properly the people who are actually in need. And that wasn't happening up to now.
So the return flights that we're hearing about, and there are going to be more of them we're hearing today. Now, the one that happened in February back to Georgia, I read it again in the Irish Independent today. The cost per person on that plane ran to tens of thousands of euro. I mean, is it worthwhile to pursue that policy if, and you've raised the issue of costs, it's going to cost so much?
So if you have a laissez-faire system, if you have a voluntary deportation system, the costs are going to balloon. And I mentioned the €1 billion just for the accommodation there. That doesn't include the money that's spent in the application system. It doesn't include the actual social welfare provided to the system. So actually making sure that the system is airtight, that it functions properly, that it's strict, that it's fair, actually saves money down the line because it means that you don't have to spend such money on accommodation or the application process or the social welfare that goes with it. And remember, even now, while there is an improvement in the government, 54%, or the majority of the people who are being deported, there's still no proof that those deportations have happened. So we actually need to fix that. We need an exit system at the ports to make sure that people have left. We don't know the amount of people who have, let's say, expired working visas or holiday visas or student visas. We don't know how many of those who have left the country. And actually, one point that Roger is right about is that the people coming from Britain through the north of Ireland, 90% of the people seeking asylum now are coming in that route. Britain is a safe country, and we still don't have a system whereby we can actually control the flow of people coming from one country to the other.
But that situation has changed, is he right there, since the change in government in Britain?
There seems to be a better relationship, but there's no material proof at all that actually there's any further control in terms of the movement of people from one island to another. And that has to be achieved. And we've said very clearly that the only way you can do that is through an Irish sea border, in that the island of Ireland is used as a unit in terms of the processing of applicants, and the island of Britain is the same. And in that manner, it is both beneficial to both countries because both countries can then control the movement of people. But what we're seeing now at the moment is a government that was pulled kicking and screaming just to implement the law. That's all we asked from the very start. Just implement the law around asylum and you will improve the figures coming in, you'll reduce the costs involved, and you'll make sure that those who are actually fleeing war and violence do have somewhere to live when they get here.
All right, Peadar Tóibín, thank you for joining us. And earlier, my thanks to Rod